Okay, so here's where I'm at with this. I recorded most of this video yesterday and had this thing almost completely put in, but I couldn't get the pillow bearing, the block bearing to line up, because what was happening, you can see here on this casting that the brace itself was actually running into it. See, here's where that piece is. So I tried a few things here, and I'm still in the process of trying some things now. I know that when you modify a vehicle, sometimes part of the keyword there is modifying and everything's custom. Like, obviously none of this is factory. This thing's been wheeled before. So I'm not saying this is anything bad on the guys who made this. This is an excellent thing here, but this is part of the deal is you gotta, sometimes your car is not built to the same specifications as the one that they used to design it, right? So all these things are built by robots, so they're not all exactly the same. So I've I went ahead and messed with this a little bit before I freaked out and started panicking and ran to the forums and started putting nasty posts, because that's not what you do when you customize a vehicle. So I went ahead and loosened up the steering box, tried to move it around a little bit to see if I could make it fit. And what I've determined here is that this clamp that goes on here is an extremely tight fit, which is it's supposed to be. Otherwise, why would you even be messing with this? There's no point in having a loose fit. So I went and put this thing in the vise and used my angle gauge and bent this back about a degree, which got me quite a bit more clearance, but I'm still running into this this happy medium here. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the grinder and I'm just going to notch this whole thing out here, because that's pretty much the only thing I could do at this point. So that's what I'm going to do now. Pulling out the plasma cutter and removing that notch in the steering box. That's not exactly ideal. It's not what I wanted to do, but I need to get this thing on here because I'm going wheeling in a couple days and I got customer cars out there sitting in my driveway. So I'm going to get this cleaned up here with the carbide burr, and then we're going to try this again. Hopefully this makes it all work. Alright, made a little bit of progress here. Sorry about the fan noise. It's got plasma cutter smoke in here I'm trying to vent out. So I ended up notching that out quite a bit and also rounding off the radius on the brace itself to get that clearance. So finally now we have enough clearance to slide this thing wherever it needs to go without actually hitting the box. The only contact we have now is with the hose. Not a huge deal. And then these trans cooler lines, which I'm going to end up probably drilling a hole in here and putting a wire tie on that to keep it from touching that crank snout. But I don't really know if this is common or not. Like I said, this thing's been wheeled on for a while now. It's 95. It's got 130,000 miles on it. You never know if this thing's been in an accident or not, or if it's had body work. I'm not sure, but this is just what I had to do to make this thing fit on mine. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the clamp up there on top and see what happens. The other problem is now I have to run the bolts backwards with the nuts forward, because the bolt comes in and pierces right into that hose, the radiator hose. So I'm gonna run the bolts forward. I'm gonna get 2 bolts. Start that. Start that one. I'm gonna get it almost to the point where it's bottomed out, maybe 1/8 of an inch or so. Put this clamp on there like that. Okay, now this is gonna be a little bit difficult to tighten these down because the nuts are flanged, so they actually bite in. Ideally, you want to go this way with it so that the bolt is going into the space where you can't really get access to. That's the ideal way. Okay, step 2 is to make sure you lose the other bolt. Okay, so it looks like we got a good contact all the way around that snout now. Okay, so you see there we got contact here all the way around here. This is what we couldn't get before because it was so far away. So now we got good contact all the way around. So now before I do anything else, I'm going to put the pillow block on there and make sure that we got that centered up, because that's what held us up before. I gotta put the damn thing back on first. Okay, so we're about 1/4 of an inch off. So the whole thing has to go that way. Okay, so the other thing here is that I have to grind on this now. These bolts are too tight on the outsides. You kind of see how they're crooked. It's not allowing this to turn at all. See, I don't even have the nuts in there. Can't turn it. So I'm going to have to go grab the zippy grinder and open up this radius here on both sides. Got adjustability. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, looks like that might be it right there. Now before I tighten that snout down, I'm just going to stick these bolts in here. Just make sure that this thing's going to go where I want it to go. Okay, so I'm actually going to do this backwards. I'm going to put the bolts in so they come down instead of putting them up. That's going to make this a lot easier to put together. I'm just going to put a couple of these nuts in here to kind of hold it in place so I can put the pillow bearing on and make sure it actually goes where it's supposed to. Okay, 3 is good enough. It's on there. A couple things I noticed. The bolts here aren't long enough to engage the nylock. I mean, they'll tighten down a little bit, but it's not going to come all the way through. So those bolts are not long enough. We got full engagement up there on that snout. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to tighten down these bolts up here on the snout to keep everything locked into place, because I don't want any of this moving around, because I don't want to put any extra side load on this sector shaft, because that's what we're here to prevent is putting load on this sector shaft. So that's what I'm going to do first. I'm going to tighten up the snout here up here to make sure this is centered. Then I'm going to tighten down these ones on the side. You can kind of see here from this angle, there's kind of a recess here for this hose. I'm not sure if that's on purpose or not, but you can see, come on, light. See, it's touching up in there. It's also shoved all the way into this cooler line, which is not a huge deal. You know, it's you got to give some to get some, right? So sometimes you got to modify things to get other things to work. So there it is. It's all in there. I messed with this for a little bit longer than I expected to, but you know, it is what it is. And also, see that this whole thing is shoved basically as far over this way as it can go, clear over the outside. It's not a huge deal, but you know, I guess it is what it is. That's what happens when you have a wheeler that you've modified and you're trying to stick some stuff on it. So there we go. I'm gonna tighten all this stuff down off camera because you don't need to watch me tighten bolts down. I'm working on tightening up the snout bolts there, and there's not really a good way to get anything up in there to hold that. So what I did was stuck a 19 open end up in there, grab a hold of the end of that, and then put a pry bar in there to hold that wrench in place to keep that bolt tight from spinning. Well, there it is. It's all in there. I was able to suck this down far enough to get the sector shaft even with the pillow bearing, which is good. The bolts here that hold this bracketry on aren't long enough to go through the nylock section there. I mean, not a huge deal. They're tight. They're not going anywhere. Ended up drilling a small hole through here and put a bunch of zip ties on these transcooler ends to keep them off of the crank and out of the fan. The lower hose is smashed in there pretty good, but I don't think it's going to make much of a difference. It is touching up here too, so I think I might try and get some more of this corrugated wrap. But now I got to put the core support back on, so I guess we'll come back here in a minute and see how that looks. Well, there we go. Got the factory brace back in. It pulled the radiator back about a ½ inch, so now that hose is really squished in there. But like I said, I don't think that's going to be a big deal. It's not going to interrupt flow at all. It's going to hold it. It's not going to vibrate. That's the biggest problem, is vibrating. It's not so much that it's touching it. It's the problem. It's just the vibrations that become the issue. So there we go. We got all that in there. So we're going to give it a shot this weekend and see how it goes. Supposed to be getting this this core support bracket from them too, but I haven't seen that yet. So all right, till the next one.